If you've spent any time with techniques like mindfulness and meditation, you've likely been exposed to the idea of separating your mental state from your circumstances. Maybe the queue at the supermarket is really long today. I don't know why I call it a queue. I'm an American. In America, we call it a line. But regardless of what you refer to the succession of people waiting to pay for things at the supermarket, let's just say there's a large number of them today. But you can choose to be impatient about that, or you can take the next few minutes to focus on your breathing and clear your head. Maybe you were turned down for a second date and you're constantly ruminating on what subtle thing you did or said that produced this unfavorable result. Or maybe bad weather has postponed that golf game with your son that you were really looking forward to for the third week in a row. But as they say, pointless anxiety is pointless. Whether this concept motivates you or makes you angry, at its foundation is a concept simple in theory but difficult in practice. Nothing is gained by worrying about things outside of your control. That unexpected line at the supermarket will delay you by 15 minutes, whether you like it or not. Your date is an independent entity that is free to choose to continue to see you or not, regardless of what you do. And predicting the weather is hard enough, while outright control over it, with very limited exceptions, is relegated solely to fringe anti-government conspiracy theories. While there are undoubtedly things that we can do to better inform ourselves and improve our decision-making, becoming perpetually anxious is generally not one of them. Learning to regulate our emotions in useful ways to avoid getting stuck in unproductive loops of negative feelings is integral in personal development. However, many who seek to improve themselves holistically will inevitably run into at least one conundrum, or more likely several, but we'll just focus on one for today. As we refine our thought processes and routines towards ever-increasing emotional regulation, efficiency, and discipline, then harmful thoughts and behaviors will start to come under scrutiny. Alongside negative anxiety loops that clearly don't serve us, we may inevitably feel pressured to zealously cut out more ambiguous, wasteful uses of our time and focus. For example, am I allowed to watch an episode or two of a TV show at the end of a day? Should I feel ashamed about daydreaming a little bit instead of solving important problems? If I really want to listen to a podcast, but I also want to work out, can I do both of them at the same time in order to be efficient, or will the divided focus impair my ability to really be present with both? Unproductive anxiety may be non-optimal, but what about being unproductive in general? Your therapist might not as readily scold you for watching a fluffy TV show now and then, as compared to, say, raging against incompetent drivers, baristas, and football coaches. But both behaviors can inadvertently share the same fate on the chopping block as we ruthlessly try to improve ourselves. We can optimize our behaviors for performance, but at some point our routines may become rigid, hectic, and limiting in the unending quest for perfection. After all, how much time can the ambitious high performer really afford to devote to sitting on a park bench enjoying the sunset? Sam Harris refers to this as the struggle between being and becoming. Becoming is in pursuit of the next step on whatever infinite staircase you've chosen, or at least feel compelled, to climb. And being is focused on mindfulness and peace with possibly never advancing beyond the step you're currently on. Sam's general point is not necessarily that being should take priority over becoming, except in modern culture where we receive an imbalanced message in the opposite direction towards productivity and busyness. Sam's argument, though, is that being doesn't require an hour of meditation each day. We can take a few moments to appreciate a refreshing breeze, to take a few deep breaths before diving into a task, or to enjoy that often promoted sunset. Being is about micro behaviors. It doesn't really have to disrupt your ambitious schedule. Except when it does. Micro moments of gratitude, presence, and contentment aren't built 3 seconds at a time. They're often the result of many, many hours of dedicated practice. If I've cultivated a lifestyle of mental resilience through dedicated meditation practice, I may be able to summon that calm in a few seconds of deep breathing when I need to. But if mindfulness is foreign to you, good luck learning it when you're stressed before an important meeting. The ability to settle one's mind with brief moments here and there is the end result of potentially years of upfront work. This has been the case in my own experience anyways. This is not to disparage the work of being, but rather to indicate that being is not free. Like many things I discuss, it has a cost. Another way to view this conundrum is one of control. If I focus on controlling my internal state, by being, I do so only by ceding control of my external state, or becoming. After all, the only thing we can control is ourselves, so we're told. But with just a bit of imagination, you'll realize this isn't really true. While we can't guarantee any specific outcome in the external world, we can absolutely influence it. And the more resource and effort we apply, the more influence we'll generally have. When we focus on controlling ourselves, our perspectives, emotions, our thought processes, we have the potential to gain complete autonomy over our happiness. Though it's certainly not always easy, we can reframe our way out of any hurdle the world throws at us. Poverty, loneliness, illness, it is possible to find happiness in spite of all of these. If we want to exert influence on the world, though, we need to have some attachment to external outcomes. I love listening to Buddhist monks speak, to hear the complete or near-complete absence of judgment, stress, contempt, and pain in their stories and their voices. They embody serenity in the purest form I have ever seen. But they've given up family, friends, and careers, essentially any impact on anything else in the world, in order to achieve this. Even monks, when they start becoming extremely committed to public outreach by, motivational talks, mentorship, and hosting guided meditations, they seem to, at least in my perspective, have to sacrifice some of that inner peace in order to do so. The greater our attachment, the greater passion and drive we can summon to see an outcome realized. While not much passion is needed for some goals, like planning tonight's dinner, it's absolutely critical for highly ambitious goals, like improving global access to healthcare. But at the same time, our emotional state is now entwined with those external outcomes. Think of a passionate climate change activist, the parent of a severely ill child, or those guys with the cheese hats at Packers games. To really fight for a challenging outcome, we need to be sufficiently attached to said outcome. And as a result, our happiness is no longer within our control. In creating agency over our environment, we sacrifice agency over ourselves. We are all balancing a precarious trade-off. Do we want to control our internal state, or do we want to influence the world? There is no wrong answer to this question, except, perhaps, to believe we can have it all. That said, it's not necessarily impossible to do both, at least to some degree, but it is likely impossible to do both at the same time. In one phase of life, you may be focusing on achievement, like career advancement, building healthy habits to lose weight and get in shape, or getting your undisciplined friends together, kind of like herding cats, to speed run the challenge mode of the game's hardest raid boss, even though no one will congratulate you when you finally succeed. In another phase of life, you may be engaged in therapy, introspection, meditation, or just taking long daily walks with absolutely no distractions and no specific agenda. The more energy we put into accomplishing external goals, the less we'll be able to devote to our internal state, and vice versa. When I accepted this in my own life, my pursuits became simplified and self-forgiveness much easier. You can have it all, after all. You just can't have it all at the same time. In short, we should recognize the costs associated with both being and becoming, and we should be intentional and forgiving of ourselves in deciding when we will focus on one or the other.